Seeking Light. It's been a while. It's 2 weeks, actually. I took a break because I was on vacation, and frankly, I just had some busyness and fatigue, which kind of got the best of me. But I'm back, sitting in my '89 Volvo with the no headliner for the most part. I seem to like cars with bad headliners or no headliners. And other issues as well. But it runs, it gets me from point A to point B, and it's safe. So that's all I care about. What's going on? Well, next week, this is my plan, folks. I will be putting a post out about this, but my plan is to do my course in its entirety, the ethics of medical mandates. The reason I'm doing that now is even though things have seemed to die down quite a bit, we are still under a medical mandate, the CMS ETS. Sorry, I've got some noise in the background, but there will be because I've got to have the windows open because I have no air conditioning in this '89 Volvo. But anyway, we have the CMS ETS. What does the CMS ETS do? Well, it provides certain restrictions that employers must engage in if they're providing health care through Medicare or Medicaid services that they must comply with if they have unvaccinated individuals. But even if they have vaccinated individuals, there's certain guidelines they have to follow. My job is doing the mandatory weekly testing, which I did tonight, but also they're going a step beyond and they're requiring me to wear an N95 mask. I have hanging on my little mirror. Anyway, I'm going to be doing the full ethics course next Tuesday, so put it on your calendar from 8 to 10 p.m. I'm going to deliver the course. I'm going to deliver it live. I'm hoping to get audience participation. We may even go into a little bit more further detail since I developed that course, because there is some information that is newer that further supports my thesis that medical mandates are unethical. In fact, all the data that's coming out now is strongly in favor of no medical mandates. However, we're going to face other potential medical mandates. They've tried to make a lot of this monkeypox, for example. And then little inconvenient news got out about the monkeypox, that it was predominantly being spread amongst homosexual males who had been active. So when you have news like that, it's an inconvenient truth to a scare narrative that the general population should be, up in arms about the newest pandemic coming out. So this topic will still be relevant. So next Tuesday, that'll be from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that would be on 6/14. And we're going to be facing this for a while. I thought I would just riff. I like doing kind of a riff format anyway. I like seeing things with fresh eyes and then just responding to them. So there's a lot of news that's happened in the last 2 weeks. One news story that's kind of picked up some national attention is this, and this is coming from The Guardian. The title of this article is from today: First openly trans NFL cheerleader to make her debut in 2022 season. Then in subtitle says, Justine Lindsay, a 29-year-old black trans woman, will cheer for Carolina Panthers Top Cats. Okay, so this is a man. This is a man who is taking hormones, although when you look at the picture of him, he clearly looks pretty buff. Doesn't look female, except for the fact that he's got some makeup on. And so anyway, that's kind of news, and it's interesting. Somebody gave some commentary on it. I think it was Matt Walsh. No, it wasn't Matt Walsh. It was Michael Knowles. Gave some take on this. Just about cheerleaders used to be about cheering for the players. They were there for the players, but now really cheerleading has become an entity unto itself. Oh, good. Somebody says, I used your videos to help me get my anti-jab approval at work. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Since I did those videos, more information has come to my mind that I've investigated that makes it clear that I could have just taken the approach that it's my right to say no to this. But, as a Christian, my personal fight to get not jabbed was an opportunity to witness to my faith. And so even though looking back, I probably didn't need to go into all the details I did, I gave a very clear apologetic for my faith before non-believers. That was a good thing. So thank you for that, for pointing that out. I'm glad I could help you out. That one video where I shared my what I did with that's been seen now 50,000 times. That just boggles my mind that one of my videos got to that level. Because I'm a low budget guy with a small audience on my channel. So anyway, thank you again. All right, so that's first story. Let's look at next story. Matthew McConaughey takes the White House podium and pushes for further gun laws. So you might know that Matthew McConaughey was kind of making, he was tentatively feeling out running as a Republican for governor of Texas. And what's interesting is he's Republican in name only, what we would call a rhino. He's definitely not conservative. He has some conservative talking points, but they're the typical ones, like smaller government, less taxes, things like that. That does not a Republican make. So if you look at the Republican National Committee's platform, it has a lot of things that it says on it about conservative values. Same thing with the Democratic National Convention platform. Big difference there. And so Matthew McConaughey, not a Republican, and he's pushing for gun control, gun laws. Now, we have a lot of gun laws. We have a lot. For instance, depending on where you're at, they would understand criminals do not follow the law. Okay, exactly, and I was going to get to that. You're absolutely right. So one of the things that's being pushed in Congress right now is to basically make it so that ARs, which don't stand for assault rifle, by the way, but ARs must be charged or sold for about 1,000% of what they currently sell for. And so their point is that it'll make it harder to get them in the general public's hands. What'll make it harder for them to get in the general public's hands is the general public who happens to be the average wage earner, who's a hardworking, honest citizen that just happens to want an AR. It won't keep it out of the criminals' hands. It won't keep it out of the wealthy elite. Boy, I'm tripping all over all sorts of words. So anyway, more laws is not going to keep it out of the criminals' hands. You're absolutely right. So that's stupid. The other thing is they're trying to limit certain clips, and one law that's being proposed may effectively ban most types of handguns if it gets to that point. Now, the Second Amendment guarantees the right to bear arms. Does it stipulate what arms there are? In fact, there are some people that have pointed out, as it stands, it does not prohibit you from owning some very high-tech equipment, including maybe even up to atomic weaponry. Now, you and I would probably say, well, there's no reason for us to own atomic weaponry. And I would agree. There's definitely a line I wouldn't want to cross. And maintaining that kind of equipment is just crazy insane. But the Second Amendment might not prohibit you from owning a cannon, a tank that's armed, an assault helicopter. Somebody's honking. Not sure why, but anyway. So anyway, the Second Amendment. I don't own a handgun. I have a 22 that currently is inoperable right now. That's about it. But I certainly support everybody's right to bear arms. And I've thought about getting a gun for myself. Maybe I should do that before it becomes harder and harder. I've thought about 3D printing one myself, actually. So anyway, Matthew McConaughey pushing for more gun control. You know, if we actually did enforce all the laws, like for this young man who shot up all these kids down in Texas, if we actually enforced the laws that were on the books already, that wouldn't have happened. Think about that for a minute. Laws like he apparently should not have been able to buy a gun based on a psychological profile that had already been done on him. But no action was taken by the healthcare workers that could have prohibited that. That would have prevented him buying a gun. All right, let's go on. China cracks down on disorderly capital. Okay, not surprising. Not surprising at all. All right, what's next? Oh, okay. I want to talk about this. Are you familiar with Davos? Davos. So Davos it's put on by the World Economic Forum. If you don't know who they are, I would advise you to become educated about them, at least to some extent. The World Economic Forum puts on a yearly conference called Davos. And Davos 22 is going on right now. It's the annual meeting. And they cover a lot of topics. And basically, these are a number of elites, billionaires, world leaders that get together and they plot, they decide what they are going to do to make policy that affects everybody in the world, not just their countries, but everybody in the world. And so, for example, here are examples of what their topics are for discussion. Journalism is under attack. Experts explain why it needs defending. So what kind of journalism is under attack? Is it the mainstream media that's been under attack by those who lean right, like myself, because they've been false in their narrative and been shills for certain parties? Let's see what else. Another topic, is globalization dead? Author and columnist Thomas Friedman, and he says no. Now, I hear that, is globalization dead? I'm like, yes, it should be. Absolutely. In fact, the last time, I know globalization has been going on for a while, but the last time that people really pushed seriously and got close to globalization did not work out very well for them. And I'm referring to the book of Genesis, the Tower of Babel, where everybody got together and decided to really make a name for themselves as a people. They globalized what was the globe at that time, and God said, okay, enough of that, you disobedient children, and spread them out. I'm looking for another Tower of Babel event for these people that go to Davos. So globalization. In order to achieve globalization, you need unity of thought. And the unity of thought that they want is the antithesis of biblical thought. Just keep that in mind. World Economic Forum. Let me go on to talk about some of the other things that they are talking about. What next for global growth? 5 reasons a 4-day work week could be the future of work, or 4-day week could be the future of work. Folks, there's a reason that we work. And in fact, we have it really easy compared to our forebears that lived a while back. And I don't necessarily say we have to go back to that. We don't want to go back to the Industrial Revolution where people were working like 16-hour days every single day except for maybe the Sabbath. And they were just bone exhausted, died young. We don't want that. That's foolish. However, there's a reason that we work. It's good to work. It's good not to be idle. I've seen this, in my own children. When they're idle, they tend to get in more trouble. They tend to feel less confident about themselves. But work that especially brings value, where you create something of value or you do something of value, like helping a patient in healthcare, that gives you meaning and purpose in life. I develop. Okay, here we go. Question. What is your view on employees wanting to work fully remote while business wants everybody to? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, it came up. Where are all my messages visible? There we go. What is your view on employees wanting to work fully remotely? Did it again, guys. Give me my technical skills are lacking. While business wants everyone back in the office full time. If you can be productive in your office, in your home office, why go back? While business wants everyone back in the office full time. Yeah. If you're productive at home, like for example, I have a work from home job. I've had it for almost a year. I am productive. In fact, I was recognized by my boss the other day, not bragging on myself, just something she said. I was basically 2 times the productive standard. I'm highly efficient at home. And there's no need for me to go into the office. In fact, I'm less tired. I have better balance in family life. If I can work from home and produce just as well, why does the company need me in the office? And here's my thought on that. So, and I'm going to tie this in with homeschooling and schooling. So you might remember, of course, that during the pandemic, a lot of push was made towards working from home and students being schooled from home. And what's happened is a lot of companies have become much more open to the whole work from home thing. And schools and a lot of children have left traditional school and gone to homeschooling, like my family. I know this in part because our state organization that tracks homeschooling and helps with homeschooling resources and a graduation for homeschoolers, they saw an increase during the pandemic. It was something like 60% in people that were associated with them for homeschooling. That's a lot of people when you understand that the number of students in the state of Virginia is in the millions. So a 60% increase of homeschooling is just tremendous. I'm going to tie that in with why I think there's been such a push from the federal government to get students back to school and to get employers to get their employees back in the office. And that is because of this globalization mindset. See, when you have people on their own, working from home, not hearing the chatter of other people who maybe can listen to music they want to rather than piped in music from the office, or they're not exposed to the political ideologies of their boss or their HR department, or if you have students that are working from their home instead of going into a classroom where they have ideologically toxic teachers giving them, what they should believe. If you are able to stay at home and work or go to school and you're not exposed to that stuff, you're more likely to think independently and more on a local level rather than being part of the toxic global elite mindset, hive mind. So I do believe that the liberals, those that are part of the liberal elite, the agenda, people like those that are at Davos, they need high attendance in public arenas like work and school in order to promote their agenda so that people will be brainwashed to believe that this should be right. Because as soon as they're not in the office or in the school and they're thinking for themselves, they're not going to be part of that hive mind as much. We see this in Jehovah's Witnesses, which is interesting. And I don't know if I have any Jehovah's Witnesses that watch this. I'm not attacking you, but I'm making a point. And this was brought up to me. I can't remember if it was by a Jehovah's Witness or a leader in Jehovah's Witness, the Jehovah's Witness hierarchy. But they found that those Jehovah's Witnesses that just read their Bible for themselves and were allowed to think for themselves tended to leave Jehovah's Witnesses at a much higher rate than those that were regularly reading the Watchtower publications or going to church, to their version of church. So when you get people away from a hive mind mentality and allow them to think for themselves, I just lost some viewers because of that. I don't know if that was because they don't like where I'm going with this. But the more part of a large group entity that you are, with the pressure of a one mind mentality that group might have, the less likely you are to think for yourself. And I think that's really why, even as deficient as progressive liberalist mindset is, and if people think about it long enough, I think they can see some of the holes in it. If they can put you in that hive mind mentality by surrounding you with people that will support that agenda, you're going to be less likely to fight it. So that's a long explanation about my thoughts on that. I'm going to try to let me see if I can view this chat again. My work in cybersecurity was converted from working in office 5 days a week to fully remote for 2 years. Then now back to a hybrid work schedule of 3 days on, 2 remote. Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that you're going back to that. I just had a suspicion of who might be messaging me with that. I don't think it's even showing who is. Interesting. Anyway, I have a friend who's in cyber who, I wonder if it might be him. I won't call you out in public here. So let's go on with the news from Davos. How public and private leaders can build a social economy by working with impactful businesses. Social economy is used in China. And in China, you have a social merit score that you get. This social merit score allows you to participate in certain aspects of not only social life, but the economy. So, for example, there are cameras everywhere in the big cities in China. If they see you help a little old lady across the street, that will boost your social credit. If you happen to be involved in an argument in a public square where you're acting untoward towards other people, that lowers your social credit score. So Davos has talked about the possibility of utilizing such a social credit score throughout the world. Of course, it would be harder in places that are more rural, but we all at least have tracking devices that monitor our social media, our location, unless you are totally unplugged from everything. Therefore, most people are going to have the ability to be tracked regardless of living in a rural setting. And so you may be able to have enough information on the web through your social media where they can glean your social credit and thus engage you or not engage you in public discourse depending on how your position is. Okay, let's continue. Another thing from Davos. COVID-19 is far from over. How can the private sector continue to help fight it? By the way, recent studies from the CDC I'm going to try not to get this video banned or pulled. Recent studies from the CDC have made it clear. Okay. All right. So I was correct in my guess of who this person is who's messaging, my friend. Okay, thank you. I won't say your name. So anyway, COVID-19 is far from over. How can we help? How can the private sector continue to help fight it? The fact of the matter is CDC data is showing very substantially that it doesn't matter your vaccination status. You're going to get it. We are at the endemic stage. We are at the stage where each variant that's coming out is less virulent, but more transmissible. That is like the common cold or the flu, which have been around for a while, and so will COVID-19. It's going to be around for the long term. We're not going to get rid of it. Yeah, it's far from over, but it shouldn't be impacting policy. Okay, how business can hardwire change to deliver on racial justice? Hardwire change. How can business hardwire change? So in other words, what they're advocating, well, let me just read their little blurb. Businesses are key to achieving racial equity through introspection, collective actions for systematic reform, or for systemic reform, and by listening to those experiencing harms. I'm going to tie this into evangelicalism. So several years ago, I was attending a church. We had thought about joining it, but I noticed some troubling trends of the preaching. And one of the things that became clear in the preaching was the pastor whose daughter had adopted a child from Africa, which was a wonderful thing. My wife and I originally thought about having what we called a rainbow family, where we would have adopted children from different nationalities, because we thought that would be really cool and very consistent with the gospel message. And then we got involved in adopting children with special needs from the Ukraine, and just that's where we went. But with that said, he started preaching from the pulpit about white people needing to listen to their black brothers and sisters in Christ, and listen. And it became this constant theme. It could be almost every Sunday that it would be brought up. You need to listen to their experience and understand. Well, first and foremost, I will never fully understand what it is to be black. I can't. I've worked with and been friends with a lot of blacks. They've shared stories with me that I'd go, wow. I had one guy tell me, or one lady, she was very open. We had really good conversations. She shared that when she was a little girl, they would have to travel in the middle of the night, and they had a gas station, one gas station that was on the way to her grandparents that would allow them to stop at, get gas, and eat a meal when none of the whites were around. I can't understand that because I didn't experience anything like that. So on the one hand, it's good for me to hear stories like that and go, thank God we're not there anymore, right? But at the same time, what our pastor is getting at and what has happened in evangelicalism is that we need to listen to blacks as far as their interpretation of the slavery of the Jews in Exodus for us to fully understand what the message of Exodus is. And that's a problem. That's what we called eisegesis, reading into the text something that's not there, that God never intended. It had nothing to do with color. It had to do with religion and being a foreign people group. Didn't matter what color it was to Pharaoh. We can all read that regardless of our skin color and understand that by utilizing God's word, by the guidance of the Holy Spirit. I don't need anybody to tell me what that means. But I'm gonna talk about this hardwiring. Hardwire change to deliver on racial justice. So what do they mean? So when they're talking about equity, racial equity, what they mean is quotas. So let's say, last I heard, I might be wrong on this, it's like 13% of the population is black. So what an organization would then say is, okay, if the population is that, 13% of our workforce must be that, 13% of our leadership must be that, or if I'm in a school, 13% of my school must be black individuals, or let's say 5% of the population is indigenous peoples. I'm indigenous, but anyway, a Native American. I'm a Native American. You know what I mean? Then 5% of our school must be made up of that, and 5% of our leadership must be made of that. That is what diversity means. And when you hardwire that into your system, that means that you could have two people who are, one is of a certain skin color, not considered minority, who has better skills, better qualifications than someone who is classified minority, who has less skills, less qualifications, and yet the mix of the company is not according to the quota for leadership in that particular company. They're going to hire the diversity person, even though they have less skills, less qualifications. That's what equity means. And that's a problem. And that's judging, again, purely by your skin color. What did Joe Biden say when he was picking a vice president? He was going to pick a woman of color. And thus we got Kamala Harris, who really is terrible. She has limited qualifications. If you hear her speak publicly, she is terrible. She has a hard time of putting a coherent sentence together. And when she does, that sentence is this run-on paragraph length sentence that maybe has 5 or 6 actual individual words in it. She's terrible. Ketanji Jackson, our newest Supreme Court member. What was her qualification? Well, Joe Biden said he was going to nominate a woman of color for the Supreme Court. Didn't matter qualifications. That was what he was going to pick. And so what we're left with in this particular case is we're wondering, did we really get the best person? Or are they only there because of their skin color? My company does that hiring scheme of hiring the person of interest instead of the more qualified person. Yeah, that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. Because then that person, like Kamala Harris, has to sometimes wonder, is she only there because she's a woman of color? But what about Ketanji Jackson? Is she only there because she's a woman of color? And then, of course, the White House has done other diversity hires. Blanking on the guy, the Assistant Secretary of Health, who's a trans woman. You know, this guy, the only reason he's there is because of that. So it's not because he's the best. So he has to live with the fact, with the idea, if he even, dwells on it for any part of his day, that the only reason he's there is because of how he identifies. And those other people are there because of the color of their skin or their gender, rather than the best person. That's problematic. And that's what equity means. And Davos wants to push it down our throats. Okay, let's go on. This is Davos. This is the world's elites, the world's leaders telling us what we shall and shall not do in the future. YouTube's Susan Wojcicki, I'm not sure that's how you say her name. She's the CEO of YouTube, on the creator economy, competition, and staying ahead of misinformation. So, I have done a lot of research in the past, and sometimes I've made very carefully researched statements after examining all sorts of data from different sides, different sources. And you know what sometimes happens? I sometimes find out I'm wrong. In other words, I've posited disinformation. I've had to do retractions on my videos. I've had to say, this was wrong, don't listen to me here, and therefore I've had to retract that information. What is somebody like Susan going to do with all her employees who are picking and choosing what they find to be disinformation? Is she going to make sure that they're carefully vetting every single piece of information to ensure it's actual disinformation or not? And the answer is clearly no. They're not going to. And all they're going to do is they're going to say, this doesn't fit with my political ideology, so it's gone, or this does. Remember back in the day when they kept telling us that the vaccine was safe and effective. And this may get my video pulled right here. Remember when they said that? Well, they made that sound like it was the absolute incontrovertible truth. But the fact of the matter is, deaths and injuries from vaccines, as reported by VAERS, which is not an easy thing to do, by the way, have skyrocketed since the advent of these vaccines. You can take that as you will. But the disinformation that they would be concerned with, that they were concerned with, was that they weren't safe and effective. So they found that to be disinformation if you said that. So that video or that comment was just yanked. Facebook did the same thing. Twitter did the same thing. And so who are the arbiters of disinformation? They're going to be people that didn't do their due diligence to thoroughly investigate, vet the information. By the way, I've got headlights shining right in my eyes from a car that somebody has parked, and I don't think it's, oh no, there is somebody in there. They've got it on with air conditioning probably. Anyway, let's move on. All right, so that's the end of Davos. And that's probably enough of me talking as a whole. So again, next week, next Tuesday from 8 to 10, I'm going to deliver my course. I don't know if it'll be on the YouTube platform, if I can share my screen, but it's going to be on the ethics of medical mandates. Applied Ethics Medical Mandates is the name of the course. And it's free. I'm just putting it out there. I've done individual videos on sections of it in the past, but if you want to get on there and interact with me or see it from start to finish as I lay out a very clear and concise, 2 hours, argument as to why medical mandates should not be legalized. I think you'll get a lot out of that. Anyway, thank you for joining me and hearing me spout. It's been a while. I'm going to head home and be with my family. This is John Emson with Seeking Light saying God bless you all and have a good night.